History is full of kings and saints, wars and treaties, battles carved into stone and sermons written on parchment. But there are also stories buried, stories erased not because they were unimportant but because they were feared. This is one of those stories. In the dim vaults of forgotten monasteries, among the dust of manuscripts no one dares to read, there are fragments of a tale that should not exist. A tale of men who were not men, of warriors who became beasts, of an order born in blood and vanished in fire. They called themselves the Brotherhood of the Wolf. The first mention comes not from a chronicler of noble courts, but from the trembling hand of a monk in Alsace. His words are scratched into the margins of a prayer book. They ride not by day but by night. They wear the skin of the beast, and when the moon rises they howl as one. We prayed they were demons, for demons can be exorcised. But these were men. Who were they? Where did they come from? And why do their traces vanish so quickly, as if the earth itself swallowed their memory? The origins of the Brotherhood lie in the fractured borderlands of the 12th century, where Christian knights marched to tame lands still loyal to old gods, and peasants whispered prayers to both Christ and spirits of the forest. It was an age of tension, of war not only of sword but of faith. And in that crucible, an order was born that belonged to neither side. The Brotherhood of the Wolf were not monks, nor knights, nor simple outlaws. They were something in between. Recruited from men with nothing to lose, orphans of war, hunters banished from their villages, mercenaries too brutal even for their masters, they swore an oath not to king or pope but to the pack. It was said their initiation took place beneath the full moon, deep in forests where no priest dared walk. There they donned wolf pelts, drank blood from a shared chalice, and pledged themselves to one another until death. From that moment on they were no longer men, they were wolves who walked upright, wolves with swords in hand. The church denounced them as heretics, claiming they worshipped the devil in the form of a beast. Peasants feared them as werewolves, shapeshifters who devoured the dead and hunted the living. But soldiers on the battlefield told another story. They swore that when the Brotherhood charged, howling in unison, they became something more than human. They moved with the speed of predators, struck with inhuman ferocity, and seemed to feel no pain. Wounds that should have felled them only drove them into greater frenzy. And then there were the eyes. Survivors claimed that the eyes of the brothers shone yellow in the night, glinting like embers in the sockets of their helmets. One knight of Burgundy in a letter home wrote, "I faced them and I swear I did not see men, but wolves standing on two legs, their jaws dripping blood. May God forgive me, but I fled." Yet for all their terror the Brotherhood was not immortal. They bled, they died, they burned. And so arises the question, what made them more feared than any army of men? Was it sorcery? Was it madness? Or was it simply the power of belief, the strength of men who thought themselves no longer bound by human weakness? Whatever the truth, the Brotherhood spread across the borderlands, never more than a few hundred strong, yet leaving devastation wherever they fought. Castles fell to their raids, villages burned in their wake, and entire companies deserted at the sound of their howls. They fought not for land or throne but for survival, for hunger, for the bond of the pack. But as swiftly as they rose, they vanished. By the dawn of the 14th century, not a single brother of the wolf remained. The chronicles break off. The trails end. Some say they were exterminated by the Inquisition, burned alive in pits as heretics. Others whisper they were betrayed from within, their own bloodline devouring itself in hunger and madness. And still others claim something darker, that the Brotherhood never died, but retreated deeper into the forests, waiting, hunting, howling beneath the moon until the world forgets them enough to fear them again. What is left are fragments: a monk's scribble in a prayer book, a knight's terrified letter, a folk song banned by the church, and ruins of villages where no bones were found, only claw marks in the walls. The chronicles of kings do not speak of them, but the silence of history is itself a kind of testimony. For silence often hides not absence but fear. This is the tale of the Brotherhood of the Wolf. An order erased yet not forgotten. An order that howled once beneath the moon and may yet howl again. And tonight, we open the pages of their forbidden story. To understand the Brotherhood of the Wolf, one must first understand the land that birthed them. It was not a land of kings or courts, but of forests and shadows, where villages clung to survival on the edge of wilderness. The 12th century was a time of iron faith and pagan memory, a collision of worlds. In the borderlands of France and Germania, peasants still left offerings at crossroads to appease unseen spirits, even as priests demanded tithes in the name of Christ. It was in this clash between the cross and the old gods that the Brotherhood was born. The earliest traces point to Alsace and Lorraine, a region torn between kingdoms, a land of constant raids and feuds. Life was brutal and men were shaped not by peace but by war. In such soil, faith in human order was weak, but faith in the beast, the predator, the survivor, was strong. Wolves roamed the forests, feared yet admired for their cunning and endurance. To peasants who had nothing, the wolf was not merely a terror, it was a teacher. Among the scattered villages, stories tell of hunters who wore wolf pelts, believing the spirit of the beast gave them sharper senses and stronger hearts. Warriors returned from battle swearing that by donning a wolf's hide, they felt no fear, no pain, no fatigue. These were not isolated practices. Across pagan Europe, the wolf had long been a symbol of strength, from the Norse berserkers who wore wolf skins into battle to the Slavic legends of men who could shift shape beneath the moon. It was from these roots that the Brotherhood emerged, not as a pagan cult, not as a knightly order, but as something that stood between, drawing from both faiths and rejected by both. The church hated them for they mocked the image of man created in God's likeness. To wear the wolf's skin, to howl at the moon, was to embrace the beast, not the soul. Priests called them Lupini, wolfmen, cursed by Satan. But among peasants they were whispered of with awe, for they were men who defied kings and priests alike, men who lived by the law of the pack. Their recruitment was not noble. They did not call for knights or lords. They sought the abandoned, the dispossessed, the broken. War orphans who had seen their parents slaughtered. Mercenaries who had no master. Criminals with no hope of pardon. These men had nothing left of human society, and in the Brotherhood they found a new family. A family not of bloodlines or banners, but of hunger and loyalty. Initiation into the Brotherhood was said to be a ritual of terror. A man was taken deep into the forest on the night of a full moon. There he was stripped of his name and given a wolf pelt. He would drink from a chalice filled not with wine, but with blood, animal, human, or both, the chronicles disagree. Then before the pack he swore the oath of the wolf, to protect the Brotherhood, to fight as one, to abandon all ties to his old life. From that moment he was no longer a man but a brother. Survivors of villages they raided described the chilling sound of these rituals. Howls rising from the forest, inhuman yet not quite animal. Torches flickering through the trees. And then silence, broken only by the cries of wolves in the distance. But the Brotherhood was not merely ritual. They were a military force, organized and disciplined, bound by loyalty sharper than any oath sworn to a king. They fought in small bands, striking with speed and ferocity, then vanishing into the woods. They wore pelts over their armor, their helms fashioned with muzzles and teeth, their eyes glinting yellow in the torchlight. To see them charge was to believe one faced not men but beasts. And they were effective. Castles fell to their ambushes. Armies broke before their howls. Even seasoned knights faltered at the sight of their frenzy. Chronicles speak of battles where the Brotherhood, outnumbered 10-1, emerged victorious, their dead few, their enemies slaughtered. But this power came at a cost. For in embracing the beast, they abandoned part of their humanity. The chronicles whisper of brothers who lost the ability to speak in human tongue, who ate raw flesh, who tore at the dead like scavengers. Priests claimed they were damned, that their souls were forfeit. Yet to the brothers this was no curse. It was the price of freedom. And so the Brotherhood grew, spreading from village to village, forest to forest, their legend carried on the wind. Some sought them willingly, desperate men who longed to shed their weakness. Others were taken by force, captured in raids and given a choice: join the pack or die. It was not long before the rulers of the land took notice. Lords complained of villages emptied, castles burned, soldiers vanishing in the night. The Brotherhood was no longer a superstition whispered by peasants, it was a threat to kingdoms. The chronicles record the words of a Burgundian lord: "We fight not men but wolves who wear the skins of men. Strike one down and 3 rise howling in his place." The church too saw the danger. It was not merely the violence of the Brotherhood that terrified them, but their defiance of order. They were proof that men could live without the sacraments, without the crown, without the cross. They were a rival faith, not one of salvation but of survival. And so, in secret councils, priests and lords alike swore that the Brotherhood must be destroyed. But the brothers were not so easily hunted. For they were shadows in the forest, and the forest is endless. What began as a scattered band of outcasts had become a legend of fear. And in that legend the Brotherhood of the Wolf was born. If the Brotherhood of the Wolf was a family, the oath was the birthright. It was the line a man crossed when he abandoned the world of men and embraced the law of the beast. To take the oath was to die as a man and be reborn as a wolf. The chronicles, scattered and fragmentary, describe the ritual in shrouded words, as if the scribes themselves feared to write it in full. But through fragments, through whispers preserved in outlaw ballads and Inquisition testimonies, we can piece together the truth of the oath. It always began in the forest. Not in daylight, not in safety, but beneath the cold gaze of the full moon. The brothers would gather in silence, torches casting long shadows among twisted trees. Their armor was hidden beneath wolf pelts, their helms fashioned with fangs and snarling muzzles. Around them the crows circled. And at the center of the clearing stood the altar. The altar was no holy table. It was a rough slab of stone, blackened by fire, stained by centuries of blood. Upon it lay the tools of initiation: a wolf's pelt still slick with fat, a chalice carved from horn brimming with a thick red liquid, and a knife of crude iron, its edge jagged but sharp. The initiate, chosen by the pack or forced by fate, would be led forward. He came naked, stripped of his old life, trembling not from cold but from terror. Around him, the brothers howled, not in mockery, not in cruelty, but as if welcoming him into death. The ritual began with the cutting of flesh. The knife was drawn across the palm, the blood falling onto the stone. The brothers chanted in a tongue no priest recognized. Some said it was the language of pagans long dead, others that it was no human tongue at all. The blood was collected, mingled in the chalice with the blood of wolves freshly slain. Then came the drinking. The initiate was forced to kneel and drink deep from the horn. The mixture was thick, metallic, foul, but he could not refuse. To spit it out was to be torn apart where he stood. To drink was to accept the beast. Some survived, trembling, coughing, howling in madness. Others died before the chalice was empty, their hearts stopping as the blood claimed them. For the Brotherhood this was no failure. It was proof that the wolf had chosen. Those who lived were clothed in the pelt. It was draped over their shoulders, the head of the wolf fixed upon their helm, the smell of death clinging to their flesh. From that moment they would never again be seen without it. The pelt became their second skin, their identity, their curse. The final act was the oath itself. The initiate raised his bloody hand and swore 3 vows: to fight as part of the pack, to share all blood and all hunger, and to abandon the name he bore at birth. He would be known only as brother. No past, no family, no lineage, only the pack. When the vow was complete, the brothers howled in unison. It is said that in that moment the forest answered. Wolves howled in distant valleys, unseen eyes glowed between the trees. Some witnesses swore the very air grew colder, as if nature itself acknowledged the birth of another beast among men. But the ritual did not end there. The oath was not words alone, it was sealed in flesh. Chronicles describe the initiate being sent into the forest, alone, armed with nothing but his wolf pelt and a crude blade. He had until dawn to return with blood upon the pelt, be it of animal or man. Those who failed were never seen again. Those who returned, dripping with blood, were welcomed as true brothers. The oath was not only initiation. It was also binding. If a brother betrayed the pack, if he deserted or disobeyed, the same ritual was turned against him. He was stripped naked, bound to the stone, and howled upon by the pack. His blood was spilled into the earth, and his pelt was burned before his eyes. His howls of pain became the only legacy he left behind. In this way the Brotherhood maintained its iron loyalty, not through honor but through fear. The Church denounced the oath as devil worship, claiming that demons entered the hearts of men through the drinking of blood. Inquisition records describe the rituals with horror. They cut their own flesh, they drink from the chalice, they wear the skins of beasts. They howl not as men but as wolves. They renounce Christ and family and become creatures of shadow. But to the brothers the oath was not corruption. It was freedom. It was a rejection of the crowns and crosses that had failed them. No longer were they bound by land, law, or lineage. They were bound only to each other, to the hunger they shared, to the hunt that united them. One outlaw song, whispered even centuries later, captured the essence. Better to howl with the pack than kneel to a king. Better to drink the blood of beasts than beg for bread from priests. We are wolves. We are free. The oath of the wolf was more than ritual. It was transformation. Men entered the clearing as orphans, outcasts, broken tools of lords and kings. They left as brothers, predators who had shed the last fragments of their humanity. And from that night forward, their howls would echo across battlefields, striking fear into the hearts of all who heard them. For the Brotherhood of the Wolf, the oath was not superstition, it was truth. And the truth was this: once the beast entered your blood, it never left. The chronicles of war are filled with tales of valor and cowardice, of men who stood and men who fled. But when the Brotherhood of the Wolf entered the field, the rules of war dissolved. They were not remembered as men, nor as knights, nor even as heretics. They were remembered as beasts. It is said that their coming was always heralded by sound, not the blare of horns or the roll of drums, but the echo of howls. At dusk, when the air grew cold and the fog thickened, a single long howl would rise from the forest. Then another. And another. Until the very hills seemed alive with the voices of wolves. Soldiers shivered, clutching charms and crossing themselves, for they knew the Brotherhood was near. When they emerged, they did not march in order like knights under a banner. They erupted from the treeline, clad in pelts, their helms shaped into snarling muzzles, their eyes glinting yellow in the firelight. They charged not as men but as predators, weaving and darting with unnatural speed. Their swords hacked, their axes tore, their teeth even bit, as if every part of them had become a weapon. Survivors swore that the brothers felt no pain. Wounds that would cripple other men only drove them into greater frenzy. An arrow in the shoulder was ignored. A sword cut across the thigh made them howl in fury but never falter. One knight of Champagne, who faced them in battle, wrote, "I struck one through the chest and he roared like a beast, tearing the blade from his own body to strike me down. No mortal man fights so. No mortal man lives so." The most terrifying accounts came at night. By torchlight, soldiers claimed they saw the brothers move on all fours, their shadows elongated, their voices more growl than speech. One soldier swore he saw a brother drop his sword mid-battle and pounce upon an enemy, tearing at his throat with teeth like a wolf. Was it truth? Was it madness? Or had the ritual of the oath truly birthed something neither man nor beast? The battlefield itself seemed to change in their presence. Horses reared and refused to charge. Dogs used by armies to guard camps whimpered and fled. Even seasoned veterans felt the strength drain from their arms when the howls drew near. The Brotherhood thrived on fear, feeding from it, amplifying it until their enemies broke before steel was even drawn. Chronicles from Lorraine tell of an entire castle garrison abandoning their walls at the sound of the howls alone. No gate was breached, no arrow loosed. The defenders fled into the night, leaving the fortress empty for the Brotherhood to claim. Their tactics were unlike any others of the Middle Ages. They fought not in lines but in packs, circling their prey, isolating stragglers, striking from the shadows. They vanished into the forest as swiftly as they appeared, leaving behind only blood, claw marks, and silence. And they were not merely warriors, they were predators. After battle, peasants whispered of finding corpses desecrated, flesh torn as if devoured. Chronicles written by monks speak of bones gnawed clean, of hearts missing from rib cages, of faces unrecognizable, as if ripped apart by claws. Priests called it proof of their demonic nature. But soldiers who had faced them muttered something darker, that the brothers had learned to feast like wolves and in doing so they had gained the wolf's strength. There is one account, preserved in the testimony of a captured brother, tortured by inquisitors before being burned. He confessed, "We eat what we kill, for blood is life. The wolf wastes nothing and neither do we. To take the flesh of the fallen is to steal their strength. To drink their blood is to bind their spirit to the pack." The inquisitors dismissed it as blasphemy, but it explains why the Brotherhood inspired not only fear but revulsion. They were not just killers. They were consumers. And yet, to their own eyes, this was no shame. To fight as a beast was to fight as nature intended, without hesitation, without mercy, without the weakness of doubt. Their howls were their prayers, their blades their sacraments, their frenzy their holy fire. It is little wonder then that their enemies saw them not as men but as monsters. In Burgundy, peasants swore that the Brotherhood transformed under the moon, their bodies twisting, bones cracking, fur sprouting where skin had been. Knights told of dueling men who became beasts before their eyes. Even hardened crusaders, who had seen horrors in the East, confessed they had never faced anything like the wolf warriors of the forests. The truth may never be known. Perhaps the Brotherhood wore masks and pelts so convincingly, fought with such ferocity, that men believed they had become wolves. Or perhaps the oath had changed them in ways no chronicler dared fully describe. What is certain is that on the battlefield they were no longer seen as men. The legend spread faster than the truth. Songs whispered in villages spoke of the wolfmen of the forest. Mothers warned their children that if they strayed too far, the Brotherhood would come, wearing their faces. Even lords trembled, for no fortress seemed proof against the pack. And so the Brotherhood's reputation grew, not through victories written in stone, but through terror carved into memory. For in war the sword may kill the body, but fear kills the soul. And no one inspired fear like the Brotherhood of the Wolf. When men faced them they did not ask, "How many are they?" They asked, "Are they even men?" And in that question lay the true power of the beast in battle. Power never comes freely. The Brotherhood of the Wolf was feared for their savagery, admired for their victories, and whispered of his beast who had broken the chains of human weakness. But beneath that strength lay a price, a curse that no oath, no blade, no howl could erase. The pact they swore in the forest was not merely ritual. It bound them, body and soul, to something older than crowns or crosses. What exactly it was, demon, spirit, or the wolf itself, no one could say. But the signs of the curse became undeniable as the years passed. The first sign was hunger. Not the hunger of men but of beasts. Brothers who returned from battle found that bread and ale no longer satisfied them. They craved raw flesh, dripping blood. Peasants whispered of seeing them gnawing bones in the firelight, tearing meat with their teeth while their swords rested by their sides. Soldiers who had fought beside them confessed that the brothers seemed unable to resist the urge to drink the blood of the fallen, friend and foe alike. The second sign was silence. Many initiates, once loud and coarse, grew quiet after taking the oath. Their voices grew hoarse, their words few, until some stopped speaking entirely. It was said their throats forgot human speech, that their growls were all that remained. Monks who studied their victims claimed they were losing their humanity piece by piece, shedding it as a wolf sheds fur in the summer. The third sign was the eyes. At night, campfires reflected strange glints in their gaze, yellow, amber, even crimson. Witnesses swore the brothers' eyes gleamed like predators, even in total darkness. One inquisitor wrote, "I looked into his eyes and I saw not a man but a hunger, a void that desired only blood. If he had been chained, I believe he would have chewed through iron." And then came the madness. Not all brothers endured the curse equally. Some grew more beast than man, prowling on all fours even in daylight. They howled in the night even when no battle called. Villagers claimed to hear them tearing through forests, hunting deer with their bare hands, feasting raw. Others lost themselves entirely, no longer recognizing brother from foe, striking down their own in frenzy. When this happened, the pack itself delivered judgment. The cursed brother was dragged to the altar where he had sworn his oath. There, his pelt was torn away and his body was burned alive. To the brothers, this was not cruelty but mercy. Better to die by fire than live as something less than beast, less than man, a hollow thing consumed by hunger. But the curse did not stop with the body. It reached deeper into the soul. Confessions of captured brothers, taken under torture, reveal a chilling truth. Many claimed they could no longer dream. Sleep brought only darkness, or visions of endless forests where unseen eyes hunted them. Some swore they heard the howls of wolves even when awake, calling them deeper into the woods, away from the world of men. One confessed that he no longer remembered his mother's face, or his name, or any life before the Brotherhood. "The wolf takes everything," he whispered, "and leaves only the hunt." It was as though the pack demanded payment not only in blood, but in identity. Piece by piece the brothers ceased to be individuals. They became the pack, nothing more. No name, no past, no future. Only the howl, only the hunger. The curse spread further still. Entire villages that sheltered the Brotherhood reported strange afflictions. Children born with wolfish eyes. Crops withering as if devoured by unseen mouths. Livestock vanishing, their bones found in neat piles outside the churchyard. Priests declared that the curse infected not only the brothers, but the very land they touched. Yet even as they decayed, even as their humanity bled away, the brothers did not falter. They embraced their curse, for it gave them what no king, no priest, no lord could offer: freedom. Freedom from hunger, freedom from pain, freedom from the chains of man. To them, the loss of humanity was not tragedy, it was liberation. Still not all agreed. Fragments of testimony suggest that some brothers longed for release. A captured warrior of the order confessed before his execution, "I have not spoken in years. I do not remember my name. I eat flesh and feel nothing. I no longer know if I am man or beast. I beg you end me." His words ended in flame. The church used these confessions as proof of demonic possession. To them, the curse was nothing less than a bargain with hell. Priests declared that the brothers had sold their souls in exchange for strength. Their eyes were said to gleam because the fire of damnation already burned within them. Their silence was the silence of the damned, their hunger the hunger of demons. But among peasants, another story grew. They whispered that the curse was not damnation but punishment. That the brothers had defied kings and priests, and for this defiance, the old gods had taken away their humanity, binding them forever to the wild. In this telling they were not demons but martyrs. Martyrs of the forest, martyrs of freedom. Whatever the truth, the curse defined them. It made them feared, it made them hunted, and it made them unforgettable. For in every howl, men heard not just the cry of a beast, but the echo of what they themselves might become if they abandoned the chains of civilization. The Brotherhood of the Wolf was both terror and temptation. For in their curse, men saw not only horror, but the shadow of their own desires, the hunger for strength, the yearning for freedom, the call of the wild that still beats in every human heart. And so their legend spread, not because they won battles, but because they embodied a truth too terrible to face, that the beast is always there, waiting inside every man. For decades, the Brotherhood of the Wolf was little more than a whisper in the shadows, a nightmare that haunted villages and battlefields alike. Lords cursed them, peasants feared them, soldiers dreaded them. But the church, the church could not abide them. For in the Brotherhood, the priests saw not merely heretics but a rival faith, a creed older and more primal than Christ, one that men clung to not out of hope but out of hunger. And so the church declared war. At first it was not open war but quiet denunciation. Priests preached from pulpits that the brothers were werewolves, damned souls who had given their flesh to Satan. Monks wrote sermons describing them as beasts in the shape of men, whose howls called demons from the woods. To shelter them was heresy. To join them was damnation. But words alone could not silence the howls. The Inquisition was summoned. In the mid-13th century, inquisitors began to travel through the borderlands, armed with parchment and fire. They interrogated villagers, demanding names. They tortured hunters and woodcutters, searching for signs of wolf packs. Men were dragged from their homes, accused of bearing the mark of the beast. Entire families were burned alive, their ashes scattered as warnings. Yet for every pyre that burned, another howl rose from the forest. The Brotherhood could not be rooted out, for they were not bound to villages or castles. They were the wilderness itself, striking and vanishing like the wolves they worshipped. And so the church turned to soldiers. The Templars were the first to be unleashed against them. Hardened veterans of the Crusades, the Knights of the Temple were accustomed to fighting men and demons alike. Armed with crosses and swords blessed in Jerusalem, they marched into the forests of Alsace and Lorraine, swearing to cleanse the land of wolfmen. At first they found only terror. Patrols disappeared in the night, their corpses never recovered. Camps were raided in silence, soldiers found with their throats torn out, their eyes staring in frozen horror. One Templar chronicler wrote, "We fought not men but phantoms. They struck from behind and vanished. They howled from the hills and our horses trembled until they threw us." But the Templars were relentless. They burned villages suspected of sheltering the Brotherhood. They cut down forests to deny them cover. They captured wolves and slaughtered them in heaps, leaving their carcasses to rot as a warning. The Brotherhood struck back with fury. Ambushes painted the forests red. Templars vanished, their armor later found hanging from trees, claw marks gouged into the metal. Survivors swore the brothers howled louder than ever, as if feeding on the Holy Order's blood. The Inquisition recorded one such battle in chilling words. The night was filled with fire, yet the wolves did not burn. They leapt through the flames, their eyes glowing, their howls like trumpets of hell. Our knights fought bravely, but when dawn came only ashes and bones remained. Still the church did not relent. If the Templars could not destroy them, then holy fire would. Priests marched with torches into the forests, burning entire woodlands, chanting psalms as the trees collapsed in sparks. The land was scarred, villages abandoned, yet the howls persisted. And then the church devised a new strategy. They would not face the Brotherhood in the wild. They would hunt them through betrayal. Captured peasants were tortured until they revealed hidden paths, old shrines, secret groves where the Brotherhood gathered. Spies were sent into villages to feign loyalty and report the movements of the pack. Some say even brothers themselves, broken by fear or hunger, betrayed their kin. The hunts grew more brutal. Packs of brothers were cornered in caves, suffocated by smoke. Others were dragged from altars, bound in chains, and paraded through villages before being burned alive. Inquisitors claimed victory, recording long lists of wolfmen executed in God's name. But victory came at a price. For every brother slain, 10 more seemed to rise. The church's violence bred more hatred, more despair, more men willing to cast aside humanity and join the pack. And so the hunt became endless. A cycle of fire and blood. In the chronicles of the Inquisition, one name appears again and again. Brother Matthias, an inquisitor known for his cruelty. He swore he would be the one to end the Brotherhood, hunting them like beasts across the Black Forest. He claimed to have burned over 50 alive, their howls echoing for hours before death took them. Yet in his final letter he confessed, "For each that dies I hear another howl. For each that burns I dream of wolves tearing at my flesh. I fear I am not destroying them. I fear I am feeding them." Days later, his body was found torn apart in his cell, the door locked from within. The hunt by the church became legend in itself. To the priests, it was proof of their holy mission. To peasants, it was proof that even God's soldiers feared the wolf. And to the Brotherhood, it was proof of their strength, for though they were hunted, though they were burned, their howls still echoed. By the end of the 13th century, it seemed as if the Brotherhood and the church were locked in eternal war. Holy fire against cursed blood. Cross against Fong. And though the church claimed victories, the forest still whispered, the wolves still howled, and men still vanished beneath the moon. The Brotherhood could be hunted but not destroyed. For how do you kill the wild itself? The Brotherhood of the Wolf had endured for more than a century. They had been hunted by inquisitors, burned by priests, and pursued by knights of Christ. Yet their howls still echoed, their shadows still haunted the forests. But every legend has its end. And for the brothers, that end came suddenly, in one single night that the chronicles would call the last howl. It was the year 1298 in the waning days of the 13th century. The land was restless, torn by war between lords, crushed by famine and stalked by plague. But in the forests of Alsace and Lorraine, a different terror ruled. The Brotherhood, still strong, still feared. And then, without warning, they were gone. The earliest accounts come from peasants who claimed to have seen the signs in the sky. On the night of a full moon, the heavens turned crimson. The pale orb became blood-red, casting the forests in an unearthly glow. Wolves howled in every valley, louder than ever before, their voices carrying for miles. Farmers barred their doors, trembling, for they knew something terrible was about to unfold. That night, the Brotherhood gathered for a great ritual. Some say it was a celebration, a renewal of the oath. Others say it was desperation, a plea for deliverance from the curse that had consumed them. Whatever the reason, they assembled in their greatest numbers, perhaps hundreds of brothers, all clad in pelts, their eyes gleaming in the blood-red moonlight. Witnesses from distant villages swore they heard it, a chorus of howls rising as one, louder than thunder, shaking the earth itself. It was said that cattle stampeded, horses collapsed in terror, and children screamed in their sleep as the sound rolled across the land. But then the howls stopped. The forest fell silent. The moon continued to bleed above, but no cry came again. And by morning the Brotherhood was gone. When the church arrived weeks later, they found the altar deep in the forest, but it was not as they expected. There were no bodies, no weapons, no signs of battle. Only ashes. The ground was blackened, as if scorched by a fire hotter than any torch could make. Stones were cracked, trees twisted and dead. And upon the altar lay a single wolf skull, charred and hollow, its teeth bared in eternal silence. What happened that night? The chronicles cannot agree. Some say the church triumphed at last, that inquisitors armed with relics and holy fire fell upon the Brotherhood in secret, exterminating them to the last. Yet if this was true, why did no chronicler claim the victory? Why did no priest take credit for destroying such a great enemy of the faith? Others claimed the Brotherhood destroyed themselves. That the curse of the oath had grown too heavy, the hunger too great. Perhaps they turned on one another, tearing themselves apart in frenzy until none remained. A secret poem from Lorraine hints at this fate. The wolves ate the wolves, the pack devoured itself, and the forest was left in silence. But the darkest tale is the one most often whispered. That on that night, beneath the blood-red moon, the brothers fulfilled their pact. They did not die. They were taken. According to this version, the Brotherhood howled as one final time, and their voices tore the veil between worlds. The forest opened, and the brothers vanished into the darkness, swallowed whole by the very beast they had worshipped. Some say they joined the spirit of the wolf, becoming one with the endless hunt, roaming still in shadows no man can follow. Others claim they were dragged into hell, their pact at last paid in full. Whatever the truth, the result was the same. The Brotherhood of the Wolf was never seen again. Yet traces remained. Villages where they once roamed grew silent and abandoned. Travelers reported hearing howls in the night, though no wolves were found. Ashes were discovered scattered in strange patterns across forest floors, as if fires had burned without fuel. And the peasants whispered still. For though the brothers were gone, their legend was not. They swore that when the moon turns red, the howls return. That shadows still move between the trees, faster than wolves, heavier than men. That those who wander too deep into the forest sometimes vanish, and sometimes their bones are found gnawed clean. The Inquisition forbade the telling of these tales, declaring them heresy. But legends are not so easily silenced. And so the last howl became not an ending but a question. Were the brothers destroyed? Did they consume themselves? Or do they still wait, somewhere in the darkness, bound by their oath, their hunger eternal? The chronicles end but the echoes remain. For silence itself can be testimony. And the silence of the forest after that night was the loudest howl of all. The chronicles end in silence. No monk wrote of the Brotherhood after that crimson night. No lord dared inscribe their name in records. No priest spoke of them from the pulpit. And yet the story did not die. For legends like wolves cannot be caged. In the centuries that followed, whispers of the Brotherhood surfaced again and again, like the glint of eyes in the dark. In the Black Forest, peasants told of strange howls that echoed on nights of the blood moon. In Lorraine, hunters claimed to find claw marks etched into the stones of abandoned chapels. In Alsace, farmers swore that sometimes in the mist of dawn, they saw shapes moving between the trees, too tall for wolves, too swift for men. The Inquisition called these tales superstition. The remnants of fear burned into the minds of peasants. But even in the 16th and 17th centuries, long after the Brotherhood's supposed end, trials for loup-garou, werewolves, spread across Europe. Men and women were accused of donning pelts, of drinking blood, of feasting on flesh. Some confessions, torn from their lips with torture, speak chillingly of a brotherhood that still existed in secret, still bound by an oath beneath the moon. One such confession survives, recorded in a dusty folio in a French monastery. I wore the pelt. I drank the blood. I howled with them and the forest howled back. We are not gone. We are waiting. Could it be true? Could remnants of the Brotherhood have survived, hidden in the shadows, disguised as wolves among men? Even in the modern age, stories persist. Shepherds in the Vosges mountains speak of nights when their flocks panic without cause, as if some unseen predator circles them. Hikers vanish in the Black Forest, their bodies never found, their camps torn apart as if by claws. Travelers driving lonely roads at night tell of hearing howls too deep, too resonant, to belong to ordinary wolves. And then there are the ruins. In remote glades, hidden among moss and stone, lie altars that peasants avoid. Scorched rock, blackened even after centuries, still rests in forgotten clearings. Offerings, bones of animals, coins, sometimes even drops of blood, are left there by those who claim the Brotherhood still walks. Scientists dismiss these tales as folklore. Historians argue that the Brotherhood was no more than a gang of outlaws wrapped in myth. But belief has its own power. For every man who scoffs, another whispers the old stories. And for every year that passes, the legend grows stronger, not weaker. The Brotherhood of the Wolf has become more than history. It has become a mirror of the beast inside every man. For who has not felt the pull of the wild, the temptation to shed civility, to strike, to bite, to hunger? Who has not dreamed of freedom, of power, of running untamed beneath the moon? Perhaps that is why the legend endures. Not because the brothers still live, but because they live within us. Their howls echo not only in the forests, but in the hearts of men who sense that beneath the skin the beast waits. And yet, there are those who insist the howls are not merely memory. In 1879, a German forester reported hearing a pack of wolves circling his cabin. Yet when he looked out, he saw no wolves, only tall shadows moving between the trees. In 1923, a French soldier stationed near the Rhine wrote of patrols that vanished, their rifles found snapped in half, their tracks ending in claw marks. And in 1976, hikers in the Vosges swore they were followed by figures draped in animal pelts, who vanished whenever approached. Coincidence? Madness? Or the remnants of a brotherhood that has never died? Some even claim that the Brotherhood is not bound to one land, that its blood spread with men who carried the oath across borders. Werewolves in Eastern Europe, skinwalkers in the Americas, wolf warrior cults in Africa, all echoes of the same primal pact. Perhaps the Brotherhood was never destroyed. Perhaps it merely changed names. And so the question remains unanswered: did the Brotherhood of the Wolf perish beneath the blood moon? Or do they still walk, unseen, their howls blending with those of the beasts, their hunger still unsatisfied? What is certain is this: the forest remembers. And on certain nights, when the moon hangs red and heavy, when the mist curls between the trees, when the silence is broken by a howl too deep, too human, to be just a wolf, men remember too. For though the chronicles are silent, the legend speaks. And the echo of the Brotherhood will never fade. Perhaps even tonight, as you listen to these words, the pack watches from the treeline. Perhaps their eyes glint in the shadows, yellow and unblinking. Perhaps the next howl you hear will not belong to a wolf at all. And when it comes, will you run? Or will you answer the call of the pack?